I learned early that some people will never see you, no matter how bright you shine. My parents were those people. For 31 years, I existed in the shadow of my older sister, watching them celebrate her mediocrity while dismissing my every achievement. Sarah drove a silver sedan. Nothing fancy, just a reliable car she bought with a loan she barely managed to pay each month. But to hear my father talk about it, you would think she had purchased a Rolls-Royce with cash she earned herself. He polished it on weekends, took photos of it in the driveway, showed it off to neighbors who could not have cared less. I drove a luxury vehicle I bought outright 3 years ago. Paid in full. No loans, no financing. Just a check I wrote after closing a deal that earned me more in commission than my father made in 2 years. When I pulled up to their house that first time, my mother glanced at it and said it looked impractical. My father asked if I was compensating for something. That Thanksgiving, we gathered around the table in their dining room, the same room where I had eaten 1,000 meals while feeling invisible. Sarah arrived late, as usual, full of apologies and excuses. She worked in marketing for a small firm downtown, the kind of job that sounded impressive, but paid barely enough to cover her rent and car payment. My parents acted like she had just returned from curing cancer. "Tell everyone about your new campaign," my mother urged, serving Sarah an extra-large portion of stuffing. Sarah launched into a story about some social media strategy she had implemented. It was basic work, the kind of thing any entry-level marketer could accomplish. But my parents hung on every word, nodding and smiling like she was delivering a TED Talk. I sat at the opposite end of the table, cutting my turkey into small pieces, saying nothing. I had closed a deal the previous week that would revolutionize supply chain logistics for a major manufacturing company. The client had called me a genius. My firm had given me a bonus that exceeded Sarah's annual salary. But I knew better than to mention it. "And what about you, Aurora?" my father asked, not because he cared, but because my silence had become noticeable. "Same as always," I said. "Working." "Still selling things?" my mother asked, her tone dismissive. "Still consulting," I corrected, though I knew it would not matter. My father turned back to Sarah. "Your sister works too much. You have balance in your life." Balance. Sarah had balance because she left work at 5 every day, spent her evenings watching television, and contributed nothing beyond the bare minimum required to keep her job. I worked late because I was building something, because I refused to settle for average, because I knew what I was capable of achieving. After dinner, we moved to the living room. My father pulled out his phone and showed everyone photos of a car dealership across town. Prestige Auto Gallery, a mid-sized operation that specialized in luxury vehicles. He had been obsessed with it for months, driving past it on weekends, talking about the inventory, discussing the owner's business model like he was Warren Buffett analyzing an investment. "This is the dream," he said, zooming in on a photo of the showroom. "Owning a place like this. Imagine walking in every morning knowing all those beautiful machines belong to you." "You should buy it, Dad," Sarah joked, and everyone laughed. Everyone except me. I studied the photo on his phone, memorizing details. The glass facade, the elegant signage, the rows of vehicles gleaming under showroom lights. Something shifted in my chest, a spark of an idea I could not yet fully articulate. "Aurora could never afford a car from a place like that," my father said, glancing at me. "Not a real one anyway. Not like the one Sarah drives." My sister laughed. Not meanly, but not kindly either. Just a casual laugh, the kind that said she agreed with him, that she too believed I was somehow less capable, less worthy, less everything. I said nothing. I smiled politely, nodded when appropriate, and left early, claiming I had work in the morning. No one tried to stop me. On the drive home, I thought about that dealership, about the casual cruelty in my father's voice, about the way they had spent my entire life making me feel small while elevating Sarah for doing nothing remarkable. about the 1,000 tiny cuts that had accumulated over 3 decades, each one leaving a mark they refused to acknowledge. I had spent years trying to earn their approval. I had achieved more by age 31 than most people accomplish in a lifetime. I had built a career through intelligence, determination, and relentless work. I had earned respect from colleagues, clients, and competitors. I had proven myself over and over in rooms full of people who doubted me, but none of it mattered to them. I would never be Sarah. I would never drive a car like Sarah, in their eyes, no matter what I actually drove. I would never be enough. The realization settled over me like a heavy blanket. For the first time, I stopped fighting it. I stopped wanting their approval. I stopped needing them to see me. Instead, I decided to make them see me in a way they could not ignore. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car, staring at nothing. The idea that had sparked in their living room was growing, taking shape, becoming something concrete. It was audacious, possibly insane, but absolutely perfect. I would buy that dealership. I would purchase the very business my father dreamed about owning. And then I would wait for the moment when they inevitably walked through those doors, probably to admire cars they could never afford, and I would be standing there, not as their disappointing daughter, as the owner. The next morning, I began my research. Prestige Auto Gallery had been in business for 15 years, owned by a man named Gregory who was approaching retirement. The dealership was profitable but not thriving, caught in that awkward middle space where it made enough money to survive, but not enough to grow. Gregory wanted to sell, but was particular about buyers. He wanted someone who would maintain the reputation he had built, someone who understood luxury vehicles and the clients who purchased them. I spent the weekend studying everything I could find. Financial reports, customer reviews, market analysis, competitor strategies. I drove past the location 3 times, observing traffic patterns, customer demographics, and the overall presentation. The building needed updates, but the bones were solid. The location was excellent, situated in an affluent neighborhood with high foot traffic and visibility. By Monday morning, I had a preliminary plan. By Monday afternoon, I had a meeting scheduled with Gregory for the following week. My assistant, Jerome, raised his eyebrows when I told him about the dealership. He had worked with me for 4 years and had seen me tackle unusual projects, but this was different. "You want to buy a car dealership," he said slowly, like he was confirming he had heard correctly. "I want to acquire a profitable business in a stable market with growth potential," I corrected. "You want to buy the specific dealership your father is obsessed with." I smiled. "That is a bonus." Jerome leaned back in his chair, studying me. He was one of the few people who knew about my family situation, who had heard me vent after particularly brutal holiday gatherings, who understood why I worked the hours I did. "This is about revenge," he said. "This is about investment," I countered. "The revenge is incidental." He laughed, shaking his head. "This is either brilliant or completely insane. Why not both?" Over the next week, I prepared for my meeting with Gregory. I assembled a comprehensive business plan, complete with financial projections, growth strategies, and renovation proposals. I researched his background, his values, his vision for what he wanted his legacy to be. I prepared answers to every question he might ask, and questions of my own that would demonstrate my seriousness. The meeting took place on a Tuesday afternoon at a coffee shop Gregory chose, neutral territory where he could evaluate me without the pressure of his own office. He was in his mid-60s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a suit that had seen better days but was meticulously maintained. He reminded me of my father in some ways, that same pride in appearance, that same love of automobiles. But where my father was all talk and no action, Gregory had actually built something. We talked for 2 hours. He asked about my background, my experience, my vision. I told him about my consulting career, about deals I had closed and companies I had helped transform. I outlined my plan for the dealership, emphasizing respect for what he had built while presenting ideas for modernization and expansion. "Why a dealership?" he asked finally. "You have a successful career. Why step into an entirely different industry?" I could have told him the truth. I could have explained about my father, about the comment that had sparked this entire idea, about the need to prove something to people who would never give me credit. But that would have made me sound petty, emotional, unstable. Instead, I said, "Because I am tired of helping other people build their dreams. I want to build my own." He nodded slowly, something shifting in his expression. "That I understand." We shook hands outside the coffee shop. He said he had 2 other potential buyers to meet with, but would make his decision within the month. I knew I had made an impression, but I also knew this was far from guaranteed. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to keep my mind occupied. But every spare moment, I thought about that dealership, about the look on my father's face when he realized who owned it, about the satisfaction of standing in that showroom, surrounded by vehicles he could only dream of affording, while I held the deed in my name. Sarah called twice during those weeks. I let both calls go to voicemail. She left rambling messages about Thanksgiving, about how I had seemed distant, about how we should get coffee and catch up. I deleted them without responding. We had nothing to catch up about. We never had. 3 weeks after my meeting with Gregory, he called. His voice was warm when I answered, and I knew before he spoke what his decision was. "I have been in this business a long time," he said. "I have met a lot of people who talk big but cannot deliver. You are not one of those people. If you are still interested, Prestige Auto Gallery is yours." My hand tightened on the phone. "I am very interested." "Good. My lawyer will draw up the papers. We can close by the end of next month if your financing is in order." "No financing needed," I said. "I will pay cash." There was a pause. "Cash? Cash." Another pause, longer this time. "Miss Aurora, I am beginning to think I underpriced this deal." I laughed. "Perhaps you did, but a deal is a deal." We worked out the final details and scheduled a closing date. When I hung up, I sat in my office for a long moment, staring at the city skyline through my window. I had done it. I had actually done it. Jerome knocked on my door, peeking in. "Well?" "We are now in the luxury automobile business," I said. He whooped, actually whooped, and came in to shake my hand. "When do you tell your parents?" "I do not," I said. "I wait for them to find out on their own." His grin was wicked. "This is going to be spectacular." I smiled, but inside my heart was pounding. This was really happening. Soon, very soon, my father would walk into that dealership he loved so much, and I would be there waiting. The closing took place on a cold December morning in a lawyer's office downtown. Gregory and I sat across from each other at a massive oak table while attorneys shuffled papers and discussed terms I had already memorized. The process took 3 hours, each signature bringing me closer to owning something my father had only dreamed about. When the final paper was signed, Gregory stood and extended his hand. "Take care of her," he said, and I knew he meant more than just the business. He meant the reputation, the relationships, the legacy he had spent 15 years building. "I will," I promised, and I meant it. I spent the next 2 weeks learning every aspect of the operation. I met with the sales team, a group of 6 professionals who ranged from skeptical to openly hostile about their new owner. I met with the service department, the administrative staff, the vendors and suppliers. I reviewed every contract, every inventory sheet, every customer file. The dealership was solid but stagnant. Gregory had been coasting for the past few years, maintaining rather than growing. The staff was comfortable but not challenged. The inventory was safe but not exciting. The marketing was non-existent. I saw potential everywhere. I started making changes immediately. I hired a marketing firm to redesign our brand presence. I renegotiated contracts with suppliers, pushing for better terms and exclusive inventory. I implemented a new customer relationship management system. I restructured the sales team's commission structure to reward performance. I renovated the showroom, updating the lighting, the displays, the customer lounge. Some staff members quit. Good. They were the ones who wanted easy, who resisted change, who would have held us back. The ones who stayed rose to the challenge, energized by having a leader with vision and drive. Within a month, sales increased by 18%. Within 2 months, we had attracted attention from manufacturers eager to partner with us. Within 3 months, Prestige Auto Gallery was no longer mid-tier. We were becoming a destination. I worked 18-hour days, arriving before sunrise and leaving long after dark. I was hands-on with everything, learning the business from the ground up, refusing to be an absentee owner. My consulting work continued, but I delegated more, trusting my team to handle projects while I focused on building my new venture. I did not tell my parents. I did not tell Sarah. I maintained the same level of minimal contact I had kept for years, responding to occasional texts with brief replies, skipping holiday gatherings with vague excuses about work commitments. They probably assumed I was still doing the same consulting work, still living the same life they had never bothered to understand. I wanted them to discover the truth organically. I wanted that moment of realization to be pure, unplanned, perfect. It came on a Saturday in late February. I was in my office reviewing quarterly projections when Trevor, my sales manager, knocked on the door. He had been with the dealership for 8 years, had weathered the ownership change with professional grace, and had become my most trusted employee. "We have visitors," he said, something odd in his voice. "A couple browsing the showroom. The woman mentioned you might know them." My pulse quickened. "Who?" "She said her daughter's name is Aurora. Said she was curious if it was the same person." I stood slowly, smoothing my dress, checking my reflection in the window. I looked professional, powerful, successful. Exactly how I wanted to look for this moment. "Tell them I will be right out," I said. "Offer them coffee. Give them the full experience." Trevor nodded and left. I waited 5 minutes, letting anticipation build, letting them settle into the showroom and wonder. Then I walked out of my office, through the administrative area, and into the showroom. They stood near a black luxury sedan, my father running his hand along the hood with reverence, my mother examining the interior through the window. Sarah stood beside them, looking bored, checking her phone. I took a breath and walked toward them, my heels clicking on the polished floor. "Welcome to Prestige Auto Gallery," I said, my voice professional and warm. "I understand you were asking about me." 3 heads turned. 3 faces registered shock in varying degrees. My father spoke first. "Aurora?" "Hello, Dad." He looked around, confused, trying to make sense of my presence. "What are you doing here?" "Working," I said simply. "You work here?" my mother asked, and I could hear the judgment already forming. Of course, her daughter would be working in a car dealership, probably in some administrative role, probably making barely above minimum wage. "Not exactly," I said. I gestured around the showroom, at the gleaming vehicles, the elegant displays, the professional staff moving efficiently through the space. "I own here." Silence. Perfect. Absolute silence. Sarah looked up from her phone. "What?" "I own this dealership," I said slowly, clearly, wanting them to hear every word. "Prestige Auto Gallery. I purchased it 3 months ago. This is my business." My father's face went through several expressions. Confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been anger. "That is not possible." "It is not only possible, it is fact." I pulled out my phone and showed him the business registration documents I kept readily accessible, my name listed as owner and CEO. I closed the deal in December. We have been implementing significant changes since then. Sales are up, Customer satisfaction is at an all-time high, and we have established partnerships with manufacturers that the previous owner could only dream about. My mother was staring at me like I was a stranger. How could you afford this? I smiled. With cash, paid in full. No financing, no loans, no investors. Just the money I earned doing the work you have always dismissed as selling things. My father's face flushed red. He looked around the showroom again, seeing it differently now, understanding that every vehicle here, every inch of space, every success represented something I had built, something I owned. "This is the dealership," he said quietly. "The one I showed you at Thanksgiving." "Yes," I confirmed. "The one you said I could never afford a car from. The one you dreamed about owning. I bought it 6 weeks after that conversation." Sarah found her voice first, though it came out strained. "You bought an entire dealership because Dad made a comment?" "I bought a dealership because it was a sound investment," I said. Dad's comment simply helped me identify the opportunity. My father was still staring at the vehicles, his jaw tight. I recognized that expression. He was angry, but more than that, he was humiliated. His daughter, the one he had dismissed her entire life, owned the business he had fantasized about. She had achieved his dream while he was still driving past it on weekends, admiring it from the outside. "Well," my mother said, her voice high and artificial, "this is quite a surprise. Why did you not tell us?" "Why would I asked, keeping my tone pleasant. "You have never been interested in my work before." "That is not fair," she said, but the protest was weak. "Isn't it?" I turned to my father. "You told me I would never drive a car like Sarah's. You said I could never afford a vehicle from a place like this. You have spent my entire life dismissing my achievements while celebrating her mediocrity. Why would I rush to share this with you?" "Aurora," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "That is uncalled for." I looked at her, really looked at her. My older sister, who had coasted through life on charm and minimal effort, who had never been challenged because everything came easy to her, who had no idea what it meant to fight for recognition. "Is it?" I asked. "When is the last time Mom and Dad came to one of my work events? When is the last time they asked about a deal I closed? When is the last time they treated my career with even a fraction of the respect they give yours?" "I work hard," Sarah said defensively. "You work adequately," I corrected. "You do enough to keep your job and collect your paycheck. There's nothing wrong with that, but let us not pretend it is the same as what I do." And my father stepped forward, his face still red. "You do not get to talk to your sister that way." "Actually, I do. This is my showroom, my business, my property. I can say whatever I want here." The power dynamic had shifted so completely that none of them knew how to respond. They had always held the authority, the judgment, the ability to make me feel small. But here, in this space I owned, surrounded by evidence of my success, they had no power at all. Trevor appeared at my elbow, reading the tension perfectly. "Miss Aurora, your 2 o'clock appointment is here early." I nodded, grateful for the interruption even though I knew he had invented the appointment. "Thank you, Trevor. Please have them wait in my office." I turned back to my family. "I apologize, but I need to get back to work. Feel free to browse. If you are interested in purchasing a vehicle, any of our sales associates would be happy to help you. We offer competitive financing for those who need it." The dig was subtle but clear. They would need financing. I had paid cash. I started to walk away, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Dad, the vehicle you were admiring is a limited edition, only 50 made worldwide. It is $300,000. If you are interested, I can have someone draw up a purchase agreement." His face went from red to purple. I smiled and walked back to my office, feeling their eyes on my back the entire way. Once inside with the door closed, I leaned against it and let out a long breath. My hands were shaking slightly, adrenaline coursing through me. I had imagined that moment for months, rehearsed various versions of it, but the reality had exceeded every expectation. Trevor knocked and entered. "That was your family?" "Unfortunately." They seemed shocked. "That was the point." He grinned. "You are terrifying, you know that?" "Good," I said. "Terrifying gets respect." I watched through my office window as my family made their way to the exit. My father walked stiffly, his pride clearly wounded. My mother kept glancing back at the showroom, still processing what she had learned. Sarah walked between them, typing furiously on her phone. They would talk about this. They would dissect it, analyze it, probably convince themselves I had been cruel or unfair. They would not understand that this was not cruelty. This was consequence. This was the natural result of 31 years of dismissal and contempt. My phone buzzed an hour later. "Sarah." "We need to talk." I deleted the message. Then I blocked her number. My mother called that evening. I let it go to voicemail. She left a long, rambling message about family and communication, and how I had embarrassed them. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. My father did not call. That was somehow worse and better simultaneously. Over the next week, I received several messages from extended family members. Apparently, Sarah had spread the news, probably painting me as vindictive and cruel. I ignored them all. I had no interest in explaining myself to people who had never supported me anyway. The dealership continued to thrive. We closed our best month yet in March, exceeding projections by 22%. I hired 2 additional sales associates and began preliminary discussions about opening a second location. My consulting clients were understanding about my divided attention. They had worked with me long enough to trust my judgment and my team's capabilities. Several even expressed interest in the dealership, stopping by to see what I had built. 2 became customers. Life was good. Better than good. I was successful, respected, and finally free from the weight of seeking approval from people who would never give it. Then Sarah showed up at the dealership on a Tuesday afternoon. I was with a client when Trevor interrupted, his expression apologetic. "Your sister is in the waiting area. She says she will not leave until you talk to her." I excused myself and found Sarah sitting in the customer lounge, looking small and tired. Her usual polished appearance was diminished, her makeup not quite perfect, her clothes slightly wrinkled. "You blocked my number," she said when she saw me. "Yes. That is childish. So is showing up at my workplace uninvited." She stood, squaring her shoulders. "We need to talk about what happened, about what you said." "There is nothing to talk about. I stated facts." "You were cruel." "I was honest," I corrected. "If honesty feels cruel, perhaps you should examine why that is." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and I felt a twinge of something that might have been guilt. But I pushed it away. Tears were her weapon, had always been her weapon. She cried, and people comforted her, gave her what she wanted, smoothed over problems she had created. "Do you hate me?" she asked quietly. The question surprised me. "No, I do not hate you." "Then why are you doing this?" "I am not doing anything to you. I bought a business. I am running it successfully. Your feelings about that are your own. You bought it to hurt Dad. I bought it because it was a good investment. If Dad is hurt, that is a consequence of his own behavior, not mine." Sarah wiped at her eyes, smudging her mascara. "He is devastated. He dismissed and belittled me my entire life. Forgive me if I do not prioritize his feelings now. We are family. Family supports each other. Family celebrates each other's successes. Family does not spend decades making one child feel worthless while elevating the other for doing nothing special." I kept my voice even, professional. We were still in my showroom after all, with customers and staff nearby. You got everything, Sarah. Every bit of attention, praise, and support. You never had to fight for recognition because it was handed to you freely. I fought for everything I have, and they still dismissed it. So no, I do not feel guilty about buying this dealership. I do not feel guilty about making them see what I am capable of achieving. You are capable of being petty, she said, anger creeping into her voice. You are capable of holding grudges. I am capable of succeeding, despite being dismissed by people who should have supported me. If that makes me petty, I will accept the label. Sarah grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. Mom wants you to come to dinner this Sunday. Family dinner. She wants to talk about this. No, Aurora. No, I repeated. I am not interested in a family dinner where everyone tells me I was wrong, where they make me feel guilty for achieving something they said I never could. I am done with that dynamic. So you are just cutting us off? Completely? I thought about it, really considered the question. I am establishing boundaries. If you can respect those boundaries, if you can acknowledge what I have accomplished without diminishing it or making it about hurt feelings, then perhaps we can have a relationship. But I will not go back to being invisible. I will not go back to being the disappointing daughter. Sarah stared at me for a long moment, then turned and left without another word. I watched her go, feeling oddly empty. I had expected triumph, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. Trevor approached cautiously. Are you okay? I am fine, I said automatically. You do not look fine. I managed a smile. Family is complicated. Family can also be toxic, he said quietly. Sometimes walking away is the healthiest option. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He squeezed my shoulder briefly and returned to work, leaving me standing in my showroom, surrounded by luxury vehicles and evidence of my success, feeling strangely hollow. That evening, I sat in my downtown apartment, staring out at the city lights. I had everything I had worked for. A thriving business, financial security, professional respect, independence. I had proven my father wrong in the most spectacular way possible. I had showed them all exactly what I was capable of achieving. So why did I feel like something was missing? My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. Aurora. It is Gregory. I sat up straighter, surprised. The previous owner and I had maintained cordial contact, but he rarely called. Gregory, is everything all right? I heard through the grapevine that you had some family drama at the dealership recently. News traveled fast in the automotive community. You could say that. Want to talk about it? I hesitated, then found myself telling him everything. About my father's comments, about Sarah, about the years of dismissal and the satisfaction of owning what my father had only dreamed about. Gregory listened without interrupting, letting me purge 3 decades of resentment. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You know what I learned after 15 years in this business? What? Revenge is satisfying in the moment, but it is a terrible long-term business strategy. I frowned. What do you mean? You bought that dealership for the right reasons initially. It was a good investment, solid potential, excellent location. But somewhere along the way, it became about proving something to people who will never give you what you want. They saw me succeed. They saw you succeed, and they still did not change. He interrupted gently. They still made it about their hurt feelings instead of your achievement. And they never will change, Aurora. Some people are incapable of it. The question is, are you going to let their limitations define your success? His words hit harder than I expected. I do not. You bought a dealership to make them see you. But the truth is, you already succeeded before you ever bought it. You had money, career, respect. You did not need their validation. You still do not. I leaned back on my couch, closing my eyes. then why does it still hurt? Because you are human. Because you wanted your parents to be proud of you, and that is a completely normal thing to want. But you cannot force people to give you what they are not capable of giving. All you can do is decide whether their inability to see your worth diminishes that worth. Spoiler alert, it does not. I felt tears prick my eyes. I worked so hard. I know you did, and you built something remarkable. Do not let their blindness take that away from you. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about his words. He was right. I had let my parents' dismissal drive me for so long that I had forgotten to simply enjoy what I had built. I had achieved everything I set out to accomplish, but I was still waiting for their approval, still angry that they would not give it. What would happen if I just stopped? Stopped waiting, stopped hoping, stopped caring whether they ever recognized my success? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Over the next few days, I made a conscious effort to shift my perspective. I still worked hard at the dealership, still pushed for excellence, but I stopped imagining my father seeing the quarterly reports. I stopped mentally rehearsing the conversation where they finally admitted they had been wrong about me. I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Instead, I focused on what I had built, on the team I had assembled, on the customers whose lives I had improved by providing excellent service, on the satisfaction of running a successful business not to prove anything to anyone, but simply because I was good at it. Something shifted in me during those weeks. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to fade, replaced by something calmer and more sustainable. I still did not speak to my family, but it was not out of spite anymore. It was simply because we had nothing to say to each other. Then, 6 weeks after Sarah's visit, my mother showed up. She came alone, which surprised me. No father, no Sarah, just her, looking older than I remembered. She wore a dress I recognized from years ago, outdated but well-maintained, and carried a purse that had seen better days. Trevor offered to send her away, but I shook my head. Let her in. My mother entered my office tentatively, taking in the elegant space with wide eyes. The mahogany desk, the leather chairs, the wall of windows overlooking the showroom. This was power, and she recognized it. Aurora, she said, her voice uncertain. Mom. She sat in the chair across from my desk without being invited, her hands clutching her purse. We need to talk. About what? About our family, about what happened. I leaned back in my chair, waiting. Let her fill the silence. You hurt your father very badly, she said finally. And he hurt me very badly for 31 years. I believe I am still ahead on that count. She flinched. He never meant to hurt you. Intent does not erase impact. He dismissed every achievement I ever had while celebrating Sarah for the bare minimum. You both did. Sarah is different than you. She needed more support. Why? I interrupted. Why did she need more support? Because she was less capable? Less driven? Less successful? And if that is true, why did that earn her more praise while my actual accomplishments earned dismissal? My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no answer because there was no good answer. You gave her everything I had to fight for, I continued, keeping my voice level. Attention, approval, encouragement, pride. I earned those things 100 times over, and you still withheld them. Do you have any idea what that does to a child? To spend your entire life being told you are not enough, that you are doing it wrong, that you will never measure up to your sister who is objectively less accomplished? We were proud of you. No, you were not. And you know what? That is fine. You do not have to be proud of me. You do not have to celebrate my success. But I do not have to pretend that your dismissal did not hurt. I do not have to smile and nod and accept being treated as less than. Not anymore. My mother's eyes filled with tears. What do you want from us? The question stopped me. What did I want? I had wanted recognition, validation, an apology, an acknowledgement that they had been wrong. But Gregory's words echoed in my mind. Some people are incapable of giving you what you want. I want you to leave, I said quietly. I want you to go back to your life and let me live mine. I am successful, happy, and fulfilled. I do not need your approval anymore. I do not need your presence in my life. You are cutting us off? I am choosing peace over pain. If that means distance from you, then yes. She stood, her movements shaky. Your father was right about you. You are cold. You are selfish. The words should have hurt, but they rolled off me like water. If prioritizing my well-being over your comfort makes me cold, then I will accept that label. She left without another word, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no sadness. Just a calm certainty that I had made the right choice. That evening, I received an email from an unexpected source. Douglas, my father. Subject line, we need to talk. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. I opened it. Aurora, your mother told me about your conversation. I am writing because she is too upset to say what needs to be said. You have become someone we do not recognize. The daughter we raised would never treat her family this way. You have money now, success, and apparently that has gone to your head. You think you are better than us. You think buying a dealership makes you special. But money does not change who you are at your core. And at your core, you are still our daughter, which means you owe us respect. We expect an apology for your behavior and a commitment to repairing this family. Until then, do not contact us. I read it 3 times, marveling at his ability to make himself the victim. I had bought a business, achieved success, and somehow that made me the villain in their story. They learned nothing, understood nothing, and blamed me for everything. I hit reply and typed, I owe you nothing. Do not contact me again. Then I blocked his email address. I felt lighter immediately, like I had put down a weight I had been carrying for decades. They were not going to change. They were never going to acknowledge their role in this broken relationship. They were never going to celebrate my success or apologize for their dismissal. And I was done waiting for them to. 2 weeks later, I was reviewing inventory when Jerome entered my office looking amused. You have a visitor, someone named Gregory. Says he is a friend. Gregory appeared behind him, grinning. Surprise inspection. Making sure you have not run my baby into the ground. I laughed and hugged him, genuinely happy to see the older man. The baby is thriving. Come see. I gave him a tour of the updated showroom, introduced him to new staff members, showed him the improved sales figures. He nodded approvingly, pride evident in his expression. You have done well, he said finally, and something in my chest loosened. Approval from someone who actually understood what I had built meant more than I expected. We had coffee in my office talking about the business, the industry, future plans. Eventually, he said, You look different. Lighter. I am, I admitted. I cut my family off. Completely. He nodded slowly. How does it feel? Liberating. Good. You deserve people in your life who celebrate you, not people who diminish you. He paused. Speaking of which, I want to introduce you to some colleagues of mine, other dealership owners, industry leaders, people who will appreciate what you have built here. You do not have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. You remind me of myself at your age. Too focused on proving yourself to people who will never appreciate you. Let me introduce you to people who will. Over the following months, Gregory became something of a mentor and friend. He introduced me to his network, opened doors, offered advice when I asked for it. Through him, I met other successful business people, built new relationships based on mutual respect and shared interests. For the first time in my life, I had people in my corner who celebrated my wins without qualifications, who understood my drive without resenting it, who saw me as I actually was rather than who they wanted me to be. 6 months after cutting off my family, I received an invitation to speak at an automotive industry conference. The event was prestigious, drawing executives and owners from across the country. They wanted me to discuss the revitalization of Prestige Auto Gallery, the strategies I had implemented, and the success we had achieved. I accepted immediately. The conference took place in a convention center downtown, sprawling and elegant. I arrived early, reviewed my presentation slides, and chatted with other speakers. Several mentioned they had heard about my dealership, about the impressive turnaround, about the innovative approaches I had pioneered. I was backstage waiting to go on when Jerome appeared, looking strange. "Your family is here," he said. My stomach dropped. "What?" "Your father, mother, and sister. They are in the audience, 3rd row." I peeked through the curtain and saw them. My father sat rigid, staring straight ahead. My mother looked nervous. Sarah was on her phone as usual. "How did they know?" I asked. Jerome shrugged. "The conference is public. Maybe someone told them. Maybe they saw promotional materials." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was fine. This was better than fine. They would sit in that audience and watch me speak to hundreds of industry professionals about success they could not imagine. They would watch other people respect me, admire me, seek my advice. "Let them watch," I said. When I walked onto that stage, I did not look at them. I looked at everyone else. At the faces of people who had paid to hear me speak, who valued my expertise, who recognized what I had built. I delivered my presentation flawlessly. I talked about identifying underperforming assets and transforming them through strategic investment. I discussed customer experience innovation, team building, and sustainable growth strategies. I shared case studies, data, and practical applications. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions, taking notes, nodding in agreement. When I finished, they applauded enthusiastically. Several people approached afterward, exchanging business cards, requesting consultations, praising my work. I still did not look at my family, let them sit there, watching strangers value me more than they ever had. Later, at the networking reception, I was surrounded by admirers. A dealership owner from Seattle wanted to implement my customer retention strategies. An executive from a luxury brand manufacturer wanted to discuss an exclusive partnership. A business journalist wanted to interview me for a feature article. "Excuse me," a voice said behind me. My father's voice. I turned slowly. He stood there in his best suit, the same one he wore to weddings and funerals, looking out of place among the designer clothing and confident postures around us. "Dad, that was quite a presentation." "Thank you." He shifted, uncomfortable. "I had no idea you were this successful." "You never asked." He flinched, but pressed on. "I wanted to talk to you about something, a business proposition." I raised an eyebrow. "What kind of proposition?" "You need someone with experience. Someone who understands cars, who can manage operations. I have been thinking about early retirement, and working with you would—" "No." He stopped, confused. "You did not let me finish." "I do not need to. The answer is no. Aurora, I am your father. You are a man who spent 31 years telling me I was not good enough. Now that I have proven you wrong, you want to benefit from my success. The answer is no. I could help you. I do not need your help. I built this without you. I will continue building without you." My mother appeared beside him, her face pleading. "Aurora, please. We made mistakes, but we are family. Family does not dismiss and belittle each other for decades. Family does not show up only after success is achieved, looking for handouts." "We are not looking for handouts," my father said, his face reddening. "I am offering my expertise. You have no expertise I need. You worked in middle management at an insurance company for 40 years. You know nothing about running a dealership, about luxury automotive sales, about the strategies required to succeed in this industry. You just saw your daughter succeed at something you dreamed about and decided you deserve a piece of it. You owe us, he said, his voice rising. People were starting to look. We raised you, supported you. You supported Sarah, I interrupted, keeping my voice calm. You dismissed me. Those are facts, not opinions. And I owe you nothing. Sarah finally joined them, sliding her phone into her purse. Aurora, stop being dramatic. Dad just wants to work with you. Dad wants a job he did not earn at a company I built without him. That is not working together. That is charity. And I am not a charitable person. That is obvious, Sarah snapped. You have become someone horrible. I have become someone successful, I corrected. If you interpret that as horrible, that says more about you than me. A conference organizer approached, thankfully interrupting the confrontation. Miss Aurora, the journalists are ready for your interview. I nodded, then looked at my family one last time. Enjoy the rest of the conference. I have work to do. I walked away, leaving them standing there, and I did not look back. The interview went brilliantly. The journalist was thorough, asking insightful questions about my journey, my strategies, and my vision. We talked for over an hour, covering everything from initial acquisition to long-term growth plans. She was particularly interested in how I had identified the opportunity and what drove me to enter an entirely new industry. I told her the truth, mostly, about seeing potential in an undervalued asset, about wanting to build something tangible, about the satisfaction of transformation. I did not mention my father's comments or the revenge aspect. That was personal and not relevant to the business story. After the interview, I returned to the reception, where several industry contacts wanted to continue conversations. A manufacturer representative offered an exclusive preview of their upcoming models. A technology company wanted to discuss implementing advanced showroom features. An investment group inquired about my interest in acquiring additional dealerships. The opportunities were endless, and they were all genuine. People wanted to work with me because of what I had achieved, not because of family obligation or pity. It was intoxicating. I stayed until the reception ended, networking, building relationships, cementing my reputation. When I finally left, it was nearly midnight. I was exhausted but energized, my mind buzzing with possibilities. Jerome was waiting outside with the car. How did it go after they left? They left? About an hour after your interview started. Your father looked angry. Your mother looked sad. Sarah looked bored. I smiled. Good. The following weeks brought even more success. The conference feature article was published, generating significant attention. 3 new dealerships contacted me about consulting. 2 more manufacturers wanted partnerships. My existing dealership saw a 30% increase in high-end vehicle sales. I hired additional staff, expanded our inventory, and began serious discussions about opening a second location. Everything I touched seemed to succeed, not through luck, but through strategy, hard work, and genuine expertise. I did not hear from my family for 2 months. Then, on a random Tuesday, I received a letter. Actual physical mail, sent to the dealership. My mother's handwriting on the envelope. I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won. The letter was long, rambling, emotional. My mother wrote about family, about regrets, about how they had not realized how much they had hurt me. She wrote about pride, about how they had actually always been proud, but did not know how to show it. She wrote about Sarah, about how she was struggling, about how family should support each other during difficult times. I read it twice, looking for genuine accountability. I found excuses, justifications, and requests veiled as apologies. She was sorry I felt hurt, not sorry for hurting me. She regretted our distance, not the behavior that created it. She wanted me to help Sarah, not because Sarah deserved help, but because we were family. I filed the letter away and did not respond. A week later, Sarah called my office line, bypassing my blocked cell number. My assistant transferred the call before I could stop her. "Aurora, we need to talk about Mom and Dad." "No, we do not. They are struggling. Dad lost his job. That is not my concern. They are family. They are people who dismissed me for 31 years. Their financial situation is not my responsibility. You have money. You could help them." "I could. I choose not to." "That is cruel." "No, that is consequence. They made choices. They prioritized you over me, dismissed my achievements, and treated me as less than. Now they face the reality of those choices. I am not obligated to rescue them from it. I cannot believe how cold you have become." "I have not become cold. I have become self-protective. There is a difference." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Do you even care about us at all?" "Honestly? No. I care about people who respect me, who celebrate my success, who treat me as valuable. You never did any of those things. None of you did." "So that is it? You are just done with us?" "Yes. I am done being the disappointing daughter. I am done seeking approval from people who will never give it. I am done sacrificing my peace for people who never sacrificed anything for me. You are going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner." I hung up and blocked the office line from her number. That evening, I met with Gregory for dinner. He had become a regular presence in my life, someone I trusted and valued. I told him about the letter and the phone call. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Nothing," I said honestly. "I feel nothing." "That is healthy." "Is it? Should I feel guilty?" "Why? You set boundaries. You protected yourself. You refused to be manipulated. Those are all good things. They are struggling. And whose fault is that? Did you make bad financial decisions for them? Did you dismiss their achievements for decades? Did you treat them as less than?" He shook his head. "Their struggles are theirs to handle. You are not obligated to fix their problems. Sarah thinks I am cruel. Sarah thinks anything that does not benefit her is cruel. That is her limitation, not yours." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle over me. I was not cruel. I was not cold. I was simply done accepting unacceptable treatment. 3 years after buying Prestige Auto Gallery, I opened my third location. The new showroom was larger, more sophisticated, positioned in a prime downtown area. The grand opening attracted media attention, industry leaders, and over 300 guests. I stood in the center of that showroom, surrounded by people who respected me, who valued my expertise, who celebrated my success. I had built an empire from scratch, proven every doubter wrong, and created something remarkable. Gregory found me near the end of the evening. "You did it." "Did what?" "Built something that matters, something that will last." I smiled. "Thank you. For everything. For taking a chance on me, for mentoring me, for believing in me." I did not take a chance. I made a smart investment. He paused. "Have you heard from your family?" "No. Not in over a year. How does that feel?" I thought about it carefully. It feels right. For the first time in my life, I am not trying to prove anything to anyone. I am just building something I am proud of. Good. That is exactly how it should feel. After the event ended, I stood alone in the new showroom, looking at what I had created. 3 locations, over 50 employees, partnerships with luxury manufacturers worldwide, and a reputation as one of the most innovative dealership owners in the industry. My phone buzzed, an email from the journalist who had interviewed me years ago. She wanted to do a follow-up piece, tracking my growth and expansion. I replied immediately, agreeing. As I locked up and headed to my car, I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner years ago. About my father showing me photos of a dealership he dreamed of owning. About his casual comment that I would never drive a car like Sarah's. Never afford a vehicle from a place like that. I did not just afford one vehicle. I owned hundreds. I did not just visit that dealership as a customer. I owned it, and two more besides. The revenge had been satisfying, watching their faces when they realized what I had achieved. But the real victory was realizing I did not need their recognition. I had built something extraordinary, and it mattered not because they acknowledged it, but because I knew its value. Sarah had sent a Facebook friend request last month. I ignored it. My mother had mailed another letter to my assistant, asking her to pass it along. I had returned it unopened. My father remained silent, his pride apparently too wounded to even try reaching out. I was fine with all of it. They were not missing from my life. They were absent from it, and there was a difference. Missing implied a hole that needed filling. Absent was just empty space that I had filled with better things. My business continued expanding. I consulted with other dealerships, spoke at conferences, built relationships with people who valued expertise over family obligation. I had mentors like Gregory, friends who celebrated my wins, colleagues who challenged me to grow. I had everything I had worked for, and nothing I did not need. Driving home that night, I passed a billboard advertising my newest location. My name in bold letters, my photo smiling confidently, my business thriving. Thousands of people would see that billboard every day, among them possibly my family. Let them see it. Let them drive past evidence of my success. Let them remember their dismissal. Let them live with the knowledge that they had been wrong about me. But their awareness no longer mattered to me. I had stopped measuring my worth by their recognition. The satisfaction was not in their regret. It was in my peace. Within 6 months of Sarah's last phone call, my father filed for bankruptcy after a series of poor investments. He lost the house I grew up in, the car he had been so proud of, and most of his retirement savings. My mother took a job in retail to help make ends meet. Sarah's company downsized, and she was laid off, struggling to find comparable employment for over a year. They moved into a small apartment across town, their comfortable middle-class lifestyle reduced to paycheck survival. Through mutual connections, I learned they occasionally drove past my dealerships, never stopping, never reaching out, just witnessing from a distance the empire built by the daughter they had dismissed. My father told people his daughter was too successful to have time for family, spinning the narrative to avoid admitting his own failures. But everyone in their circle knew the truth. They had dismissed me until I became undismissible, and by then, it was too late. I thought sometimes about that Thanksgiving dinner, about the moment my father had casually declared I would never drive a car like Sarah's, never afford a vehicle from a place like the one in his phone. He had been so certain of my limitations, so confident in his assessment. 3 dealerships later, with a 4th in development, and a consulting business that earned more annually than he had made in his entire career, I understood something fundamental. Revenge was not about making them see my worth. It was about finally seeing it myself, and building a life where their blindness became irrelevant. Some battles are won not by defeating your enemies, but by becoming someone they can no longer touch.